This presentation revolves around a technique called habit reversal. Habit reversal, as the name implies, is a technique used to overcome habits, such as nervous habits, tics, or stuttering. Indeed, habit reversal is most often utilised to alleviate the symptoms of Tourette syndrome. Tourette syndrome often begins with vocal tics, usually during the teenage years. That is, during conversations, the individuals might snort, bark, shout expletives, or emit other sounds. Then over time, individuals are more likely to develop motor tics as well, such as jerking their head suddenly, clapping their hands, shrugging their shoulders, poking out their tongue, and so forth. And some events or circumstances, such as feelings of stress, can provoke these tics. For example, whenever another person sniffs, an individual with Tourette syndrome might sniff as well. Yet other events or circumstances can diminish the incidence of tics. For example, while singing or playing music, tics might vanish. Likewise, the tics often, but do not always, dissipate after individuals reach adulthood. Now, the syndrome is often ascribed to issues with the basal ganglia, a region in the brain central to the production and inhibition of movements. However, the precise mechanisms that underpin Tourette syndrome have not been clarified. But besides Tourette syndrome, habit reversal might be used in other circumstances. For example, habit reversal is often used to prevent the nervous habits of people. Habits such as biting their fingernails, cracking their knuckles, and chewing their pens while anxious or stressed. Furthermore, habit reversal can be utilised to overcome stuttering. So habit reversal entails 4 key phases. The first phase is to develop awareness of the tics or habits and awareness of the feelings that immediately precede these tics or habits. That is, individuals need to become more aware or attuned to their habits and more aware or attuned to the triggers or feelings that precede these habits. Specifically, they should attempt to determine the events or states that precede or incite their undesirable habits, such as specific emotions, people, locations, and goals. For example, they might discover that whenever they feel anxious, they often experience the urge to bark. Or they might realise that whenever a specific sensation pervades their body, such as a quivering in their legs, they often jerk their head. Now, this phase can be difficult to fulfill. Paradoxically, if people are not usually aware of their undesirable habits, they cannot readily identify the triggers or precursors of these habits. So instead, they could ask someone to indicate when they initiate these undesirable behaviours, such as vocal tics. Then, during this moment, they can reflect upon the emotions, people, locations, and goals they experienced or observed moments before. And these emotions, people, locations, goals, and so forth might be the potential triggers. Alternatively, to uncover these triggers, they could even video and record themselves in specific circumstances. Then once they identify these triggers or precursors to their tics and habits, they should form the intention to be mindful in response to these triggers or precursors. They could, for example, repeat to themselves several times something like, "Whenever I feel nervous, I will check my behaviour," or "Whenever my legs begin to tremble, I will focus my attention on my behaviour." And this technique, in which people connect an intention to a specific circumstance, is called an implementation intention, and it's been shown to be effective. In addition, exercises that improve the capacity of individuals to be mindful of their feelings and behaviours, such as mindfulness meditation, could be helpful as well. The second phase revolves around learning to initiate competing responses. That is, the individual should be encouraged to identify possible behaviours that are incompatible with the undesirable habit. For example, to override the tendency to bite their fingernails, they could clench their fist, or to override the tendency to bite their lip, they could clench their teeth, and to override facial tics, they could sort of purse their lips. And to overcome or prevent stuttering, they could engage in diaphragmatic breathing, that is, deep, regular breathing to relax. And once they identify this competing response, They should then form the implementation intention to initiate this response as soon as they experience the trigger or precursor to the undesirable habit. For example, they could repeat to themselves several times, "Whenever I feel nervous, I will clench my left fist," or "Whenever I feel I'm about to stutter, I will breathe deeply." And these competing responses provide two benefits. First, these responses impede or prevent the habit, and second, these responses are usually somewhat unpleasant and therefore act as a punisher as well. So consequently, because this competing response is unpleasant, individuals might be less inclined to engage in the undesirable behaviour in the future. Now, the third phase is to garner the support of other people, such as family members or close friends. And other people can fulfill at least three roles. First, other people, such as family, can identify each time the client initiates this habit, and therefore can help this client identify the triggers or precursors of their habits. Second, other people can evoke a competing response. For example, if the client bites a fingernail, the other person could offer something to this client like a salt shaker. And so clasping this other item would prevent the client from biting a fingernail. And third, other people can praise the client at suitable times. For example, parents could praise their son whenever he attempts to initiate a competing response. Now, the final phase is to motivate individuals to sustain these competing responses, and several techniques can be applied to enhance motivation. One technique, for example, is called mental contrasting. And first, the client should be prompted to contemplate the negative emotions they experience whenever they reflect upon their habit. They might feel frustrated or shamed whenever they bark in public, for example. And second, the client should be prompted to consider the positive emotions they might feel if they achieve their goal to overcome their habit, like pride or relief. And finally, the client should identify two obstacles that could impede this goal. And this technique tends to promote motivation. In particular, this technique increases the likelihood that people associate the obstacles with positive emotions such as relief. So consequently, they feel more energized to overcome these obstacles. They're more inclined to achieve their goal to overcome their habit. Now, many other techniques could be utilized to sustain motivation. So, for example, individuals could be asked to consider how this attempt to reverse their habit could help them achieve their future aspirations. Because after people contemplate their future aspirations or values, they tend to resist temptations better.